Peace TV English, the solution for humanity.
When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the rockets are high and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, press if you must but do not ever quit.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk. I'm your host Khalil Amunet. Today our topic is the application of Sharia in the West. Sharia is a word that is attached to a lot of controversy, especially in the West. There are even groups devoted solely to opposing the application of Sharia. What is the actual meaning of the term Sharia is what we'd like to talk about in this episode of Let's Talk. I'd like to welcome our guest, Dr. Hatem Al-Haj. He's the director of the Sharia Academy of America. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'd like to also welcome Sheikh Haitham Al-Haddad. He's the director of the Muslim Research and Development Foundation think tank. It aims to make solutions for Muslims living in the West. You can also visit their website, islam21c.com. Welcome, Dr. Haitham.
Hayyakallah, jazakallah khair.
Welcome, Joe. And also our in-studio audience. Assalamu alaikum and welcome. So, I'd like you to answer the first question I posed the starting of the show. Why is there so much suspicion attached to this word, Sharia?
Well, there is so much suspicion because of lack of knowledge of what Sharia is about, and because of lack of knowledge, first of all, what is Sharia? Many times people think of Sharia, whenever the word Sharia is mentioned, to refer only to the prescribed punishments, which are part of Sharia. But if you look at how big that part is, it is part of many parts of what Sharia is about. Sharia is the way, is the path. The word in and of itself linguistically means the path to water sources or water bodies. And the similarity here between Sharia and the path to a water body is that Sharia sustains the spiritual life of the individual, and also the physical life, promotes and protects the physical life of the individual, just as much as water is necessary for the sustenance of the physical body. So that's where the word comes from. So it's a whole way of life. Sharia is basically the whole revelation. Sharia is Allah's prescription for humanity, for their well-being, for their welfare. It pertains to the Aqidah, and it pertains to matters of practical practices, such as acts of worship, transactions, customs, traditions, punishments, judiciary system. So it is much more comprehensive than many people may think. So if they understand what it means, when I make wudu, I am implementing Sharia.
Okay.
So there is no way that Muslims can live without Sharia. When I say Allahu Akbar to start my prayer, that is part of Sharia. When I fast, that is Sharia. And it is not conceivable that Muslims may do away with any of that.
So, Dr. Haitham, so Sharia can differ from one place to the other in that case, since you cannot apply, when we're talking about Sharia, we don't necessarily have to apply hudud, for example, in the West.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The implementation of Sharia in the West has to be understood carefully. Otherwise, as the Sheikh said, that it is normally misunderstood. But what do we mean by it? Implementation of Sharia in the West. First of all, to apply Sharia in a certain location, in a certain society, you need to have prerequisites. And we need to go back to the life of the Prophet ﷺ and to see how the Prophet ﷺ conducted himself in terms of da'wah and in terms of calling for Sharia to be implemented. In the beginning, the Prophet ﷺ called people to endorse Islam, and in particular the elite, because once the elite will endorse Islam, the rest of the people are likely to follow them. And once most of the people endorse Islam, they would like to see Islam as the governance body, and then they will implement Sharia themselves. So it is not imposed on people who do not accept Islam in the first place. It is true that in certain circumstances where Muslims conquered certain lands, they would implement Sharia, but in a limited capacity based on some other circumstances. So that should be, once we talk about implementation of Sharia in the West, we are not talking about implementing Sharia in full and imposing it on the people who do not endorse Islam in the first place. Then the second question, there are Muslims living in the West.
Yes.
So those Muslims, should they implement Sharia or shouldn't they implement Sharia? First of all, this is a big question. I cannot claim that I can't answer this question. In fact, it is part of my PhD. I discussed this point and I said that maybe this needs conferences where group of scholars can discuss this scenario. A non-Muslim country allowed some Muslims to implement Sharia in full. Can they implement it among themselves while the governance of that state does not belong to them, which means that they have kind of self-autonomy, if that happened? Now, Muslims have some freedom to implement some of their laws in South Africa and maybe in some other areas in Philippines, etc. But anyway, this is not a point to be discussed now. This is a very advanced stage that we don't need to discuss it now. So when we discuss about implementation of Sharia by Muslim minorities, what do we mean by that? We are talking about essential elements for the well-being of the Muslim community in non-Muslim country, and in particular matters related to ibadat. As Dr. Hatem said, when I pray, I am implementing Sharia. When I eat halal meat is regulated in most non-Muslim countries by law.
Yes.
So, which means that the law has accepted elements of Sharia. Building mosques is regulated by most of the non-Muslim countries. So that is part of Sharia. Wearing hijab is part of Sharia, and it is at least accepted by many non-Muslim countries. So wherever Muslims are there, Sharia is there. So how far can they go? This is the question. Hijab, the personal matters should be conducted according to Sharia. Are there any other elements of Sharia that they need and they must implement other than their personal ibadat, acts of worship? Here, one of the elements that they need to strive to implement is the application of the Muslim personal law. The Muslim personal law, matters related to nikah, matters related to talaq, dissolution of marriage, inheritance, and related matters. Because these matters, Muslims cannot live without them. A male Muslim cannot cohabit with a Muslim lady because of any other system other than the Islamic system, which is Sharia, which is marriage. A Muslim cannot inherit from someone other than through the Islamic system. So a Muslim cannot live without the Muslim personal law wherever he resides. So Muslims in non-Muslim countries should strive to implement at least the basics of Muslim personal law among themselves, and in order for that implementation to be effective, they should seek the judicial approval of what they implement. So the Muslim personal law can be incorporated within the judicial system in many non-Muslim countries. And here I recall the experience of South Africa, where, you know, Muslims in South Africa have a good position. So I've been told when I was doing my research that after the apartheid, they called Muslims to have the Muslim personal law codified so they can incorporate it in the judicial system. Unfortunately, the disunity among Muslims around this subject caused the delay of this, and I don't know whether the government wiped out this offer or not. Muslims there, they were differing on a point. Either, some of them said, either we implement it in full or we don't implement it. We can't fragment the implementation of Sharia. So we can't apply Muslim personal law only and leave the rest of Sharia.
Well,
so the government has to give us all Sharia or none. That was the position of some Muslims, but the rest of the Muslims, they said, no, whatever is given to us, in fact, it might not be appropriate for us as a minority to implement Sharia in full. So let us implement at least the Muslim personal law. So the implementation, in summary, the implementation of Muslim personal law, or in fact, to be more precise, the incorporation of Muslim personal law within the judicial system, is what Muslims are intending and Muslims are calling for in the West. They are not calling for the implementation of Sharia in full in the West. Why? Simply because the premise, the ground for that does not exist in the first place.
That's all the time we have for this segment. Please don't go away.
Every action depends upon its intention.
Intention sincere.
What is your intention? Why do you do what you do?
Concentration focused. Dedication dynamic.
Every single aspect of your mind, of your soul, of your heart, is it for Allah, sincerely for Him, or is it for something else?
Get going on how to improve your prayers.
The purpose of these talks is to counter exactly that type of behavior.
Join Abdul Rahim Green.
In other words, with the outward action, there is also an inner dimension.
In Inner Dimensions of Worship, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. and repeat telecast at 8:30 a.m. UK on Peace TV.
Conquests and rebellions, victories and defeats, honor and betrayal, the noble and the wicked. Join me, Muhammad Tim Humble, on a journey of discovery through our Islamic past to find lessons for our Islamic future.
Perceive the unusual and consistent progress of Islam due to its unique attitude with the passage of time in Lessons from Islamic History. Next on Peace TV.
Welcome back. We're just speaking about implementation of Sharia law in the West. It would require a separate state with police force and we're talking about full Islamic Sharia implementation, which is capital punishment, hudud, all that type of thing, which requires a law enforcement and such, which is a separate state, which it can't really happen.
It actually, you know, in confederal systems, this could happen.
Yeah,
and
true.
If they allow the Muslims, let's say there's a Muslim minority that is a significant Muslim minority in one particular country, let's say India, and they allowed the Muslims in certain governances in India to rule by the Sharia, then it is almost the agreement of the scholars that being empowered by the non-Muslim community to implement the Sharia, that they must implement the Sharia. Because فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, fear Allah as much as you can. And if he can implement the Sharia, then وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. It is not appropriate or fitting for a believing man or a woman when Allah and His Messenger decide on a matter that they have an option regarding their affairs, to choose to take or to not. If given the power, they should take it, and they should either accept the qadis that are hired by the non-Muslim governor, the Muslim qadis that are hired by the non-Muslim governor, or if he allowed them to choose their own qadis, then they must appoint their own qadis. So that is a little bit too rosy.
Though. That's not our situation in the West.
It may be too rosy in the West, but it may be possible in some places where the Muslim minorities are more established. So usually we're talking about judicial system. When people talk about Sharia, they're talking about the judicial system. We said it is much bigger than this, but even in the judicial system, there is judgment, there is judging, which is the work of the qadi. There is arbitration, which is tahkim, which is the work of the muhakkam in Sharia. There is mediation, which is wasata, to mediate between people, certain matters between them. And then there is counseling. So if they give us all the way up to arbitration, we take it.
Yes.
If they give us all the way up to mediation, we take it. You know, certainly counseling, no one can prevent people from counseling.
No.
People.
That's what most masajid do in the West, is counseling.
But whatever seating is given to us, I think that we should not fall short of utilizing all the room that was given to us to live according to the Sharia. Yet we should not penetrate that ceiling.
In the United States, for example, you're the director of an organization called Sharia Academy of America. What is that organization's role? Does it implement Sharia, or is there such an organization that does?
Well, Sharia Academy of America is an educational institution. It gives a bachelor, master's, PhD in Islamic studies. So it is not an organization that implements Sharia. But there is the Assembly of Muslim Jurists in America, which is an organization that promotes Sharia in a way that is not in conflict with local laws. So it pretty much utilizes, as I said in the previous segment, all the room that's available, that is made available for us to have programs for arbitration, in which the arbitrator would be trained in Islamic law and also trained in the legal system, the local legal system, so that he wouldn't cross red lines within the context of his arbitration. And that particular experience has been met with a lot of doubt on the part of people who are opposed to Sharia. And in fact, AMJA has been attacked several times by such, so-called think tanks.
Yeah.
And activists that are particularly opposed to Sharia. Sometimes it's because of ignorance, and sometimes it is because of just stranger anxiety. Children, a condition called stranger anxiety. It starts at about 9 months of age, peaks around 18 months of age, and then starts to go away by 3 years of age. And for some people, it carries on.
It carries on. Any strange word is attached with suspicion.
Any strange
or culture,
appearance or culture or habit, custom, tradition gives people a little bit of an anxiety, people who were not able to outgrow that stranger anxiety.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience? Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Hatem. Are you aware of in the United States there is a state called Tennessee, and they want to ban Sharia there, which will result in people not being allowed to make wudu in public or praying in public? What do you advise to these people in the Muslim community there?
I think those are extremely extreme fragment or segments of the society that would go as far as banning wudu in public or prayer in public. But what is more possible is the banning of Sharia law, and I think that the law did pass to ban the use of Sharia law within the judicial system in that particular state. So the law did pass, but it does not have to do with personal matters. It is basically to prohibit American judges from considering Sharia law.
Okay, so in a case where like a Muslim couple get married, they get married Islamically through an imam or Muslim judge or whoever, and then they want a divorce, and perhaps the female goes to a judge for divorce and just gets a divorce from the court and does not do the Islamic way, which has some conflicts. So is that where this law banning Sharia would apply?
They're basically addressing their own judges to not consider the Sharia or its regulations in a case like this, or in any case that pertains to Muslims. So let's say that the husband will bring a sheikh or imam or a Sharia expert to testify on his behalf that what he did with her was within what is considered permissible in Sharia. Then the judge is barred from
acting
upon this information or even listening to it.
Okay. Do you have any more questions?
Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Hatem, my question is basically a sort of a extension from the previous question. I'd like to know, like, what does someone do when they're living in like the West and they find themselves in a position where basically, you know, if they were to act upon the Sharia, they're going against like the law, the law of the country.
Well, alhamdulillah, the Sharia gave us enough flexibility to not cause us much hardship. But in personal matters and matters of worship and, like in personal matters, you will not find much difficulty living by the Sharia. In matters of worship, you will not find difficulty living by the Sharia, except for the inconvenience, so that, you're out in the street and you don't have like masajid nearby and things of that nature, but no one is preventing you from praying or fasting or, giving your zakat out or making hajj, etc. It gets a little bit more complicated when it comes to transactions, whether those interactions or transactions are in the financial sector or family laws. It will require the cooperation of two individuals in this case. That's why when you get married, you want to get married to someone who's righteous, that will submit to the law of Allah and the guidance of the Sharia without needing any enforcement from the law enforcement agencies, because the law enforcement agencies will not enforce the laws of Sharia. So you want someone who will internally monitor themselves and make sure that they are compliant with Sharia. In the financial arena, that is where arbitration comes in. Like if you disagree with a Muslim or you have a dispute with a Muslim over some transaction that took place between you, then if the law allows us to do this, then it is binding on us, not only that we submit to the law of Allah, but also it would be binding on us that we state in our contract that we will seek arbitration, Islamic arbitration, to resolve any disputes that will stem from this contract.
So that's a sort of solution for Muslims in the West.
Because ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Whatever is required for completing your obligations or fulfilling your obligations is obligatory in and of itself. So if it is obligatory on us to submit to the Sharia and to abide by the Sharia, and this measure would allow us, would enable us to actually do that, then when two Muslims come together and start like a company or something of that nature,
they can agree.
If the law allows us to do this, actually the law does allow people
so you write in your contract
to seek arbitration of their own choosing. Okay. Yeah, particularly in financial matters. Maybe in family law it's a little bit more complex.
Okay, that's all the time we have. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you very much, Dr. Haytham. And thank you also, Dr. Hatem. And I'd like to thank our studio audience. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt. Success is a failure turned inside out.
Jameel Rashid.
Living in the West, a very important topic that we're going to look into and expand upon. I have with me today Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad.
The West, home to over 45 million Muslims.
Al-Islam as the supreme law, but that is not the situation here.
In analysis, their present status, challenges,
how to interact with your neighbor, how to be involved in a political dimension,
opportunities and future.
All our actions are governed by what Allah Jalla wa Ala and His Messenger said.
Haytham Al-Haddad.
Which means that it is part of fiqh. Fiqh in brief is life. How to live is fiqh.
Join Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad as he discusses critical issues Muslims face, like dealing with non-Muslims, the importance of identity, and conforming in a multicultural society in Living in the West. Every Tuesday at 3 p.m. and repeat telecast at 1 a.m. UK on Peace TV.
Surah Ikhlas is the touchstone of theology. Theology means the study of God. Surah Ikhlas is the litmus test for the study of God. It is the 112th chapter of the Quran, verse number 1 to 4. Kul huwa Allahu ahad. Say He is Allah, one and only. Allahu samad. Allah, the absolute, the eternal. Lam yalid walam yulad. He begets not, nor is he begotten. Walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. There is nothing like unto him. It's mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 6, book of virtues of the Quran, hadith number 5013. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, Surah Ikhlas is equal to the 1/3 of the Quran. There are 4 criteria for the verification of the true God. The first is Ahad, the one and only. The second is As-Samad, the absolute, the eternal. The third is Lam Yalid Walam Yulad. He begets not, nor is he begotten. The fourth is Walam Yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. There is nothing like unto him. Verify today whether the God you are worshipping is true or not with the help of Surah Ikhlas, the touchstone of theology.